Hello, and welcome to the Buena Vista Project, a podcast about Mexican-American history, politics, cultura y más, coming to you from San Antonio, the Mexican-American capital of the United States. I'm your co-host, Elaine Ayala.
And I'm your co-host, Michael Quintanilla. With us today is Congressman Joaquin Castro, who represents Texas's 20th Congressional District in the U.S. House.
We're here to talk about his often unrecognized work in Hollywood, the book publishing industry, and the news media to push for accountability and equitable hiring. Welcome, Congressman.
Good to be with you all.
Welcome.
Let's dive in. Tell us about your work, twice expressed in Variety magazine. One of your columns was headlined, and we had to pick it out to say it aloud. Latinos love Hollywood, but Hollywood hates Latinos.
Yeah.
And now I also know that a USC Annenberg study found that Latinos had a speaking role in less than 5% of movies. And of these, nearly 50% were criminals or angry characters. And also 4% were Latino directors and 3% were Latino producers. Can you speak to
all
this,
of this?
please?
All of this.
Yeah, well, a lot of it started when I was chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus in 2019 and the shooting in El Paso, the tragedy where this madman drove 10 hours and killed 23 people and injured more than 20 others. And in that manifesto that he wrote, he said that he considered them, quote unquote, Hispanic invaders to Texas. And I thought about how somebody who really didn't grow up around Mexican immigrants or an immigrant community, how they would come to that conclusion. And I don't think there's a single reason or culprit, but certainly mass media over the years, Hollywood, hard news, all forms of mass media has had some influence on how the American people and public sees Latinos. And when your story is not told and when your positive contributions are not told about how folks from your community have contributed in different ways to the success of the country, then you exist in a kind of cultural black hole. And that cultural black hole gets filled by stereotypes. You're defined by those stereotypes instead of the positive part of your culture and your contributions. And so I think that's what we've seen over the years. You mentioned the percentage of Latinos who are depicted as criminals, as quote unquote illegals, as gangbangers, all these negative stereotypes. When you do that for 50 or 60 years in mass media, when hard news stories approach the community on those grounds, when in Hollywood you're disproportionately portrayed that way, that affects the American psyche. And that's what we found. And I believe that one way you combat that is by getting more Latinos into Hollywood and into mass media, whether it is Hollywood television, film, book publishing, all of these things, that it makes a difference.
So you've met with, speaking of that, with studio heads, talent agencies, and publishers, and the whole media ecosystem. So what's the most important eye-opening moment you've had when trying to explain to them that Latinos aren't a niche audience and that we are actually the mainstream?
Yeah, I don't think that they really grasp who Latinos are or what the audience is. I had a meeting, I remember, with the Association of American Publishers. It was on Zoom by this time because of the pandemic, but around.
Are these book publishers or news?
This was the book publishing industry. And remember, book publishing is incredibly important because a lot of things in media, that a lot of projects are derivative of some written intellectual property. So for example, somebody will write a book and that book will end up as a television series or as a film. So it often starts with a book. And so we were having this Zoom meeting, and one of the CEOs of one of the top 5 publishing companies in the country, I asked him a question. I said, how many Latinos, or can you name 3 Latinos or Latinas who had a significant impact in American history? And now this was a very accomplished man, probably in his 50s, Ivy League educated, head of this huge company, that supplies textbooks to secondary education and higher education. And the man thought about it for about 10 seconds. And he finally said, no, I can't. And we weren't having a contentious conversation. He wasn't trying to be rude or dismissive of my question. He was earnestly answering my question that he could not think of or name easily 3 Latino or Latina figures in American history. And, my first instinct was to be mad at him, because here you are, you're this publisher and you're supplying especially all these schools, including very Latino schools, and you can't name a basic 3 people. But really, to me, it was really more emblematic of a systemic issue. Because I bet you if you ask that question of 80 or 90% of Americans, including, honestly, many in our community, they couldn't off the top of their heads.
Or members of Congress.
I'm sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's permeated American society. But that, to me, was the biggest eye-opener, that even at the highest levels of media, you don't have folks who have even sometimes a rudimentary understanding of who the Latino community is.
That first question refers to them too, in terms of those characters that they see, the people that they remember. They're faceless, they're nameless, they're just these people that operate in the lower echelons of our economy.
No, I think that's right. And I think, recently it came up at the Spurs game
Yes.
where they got the video of the woman's text messages, and I guess whoever she was talking to, I don't know if it was her or the other person, said that there's all these crazy Hispanic fans.
Yes.
Well, they are kind of wild, like very enthusiastic. But the real thing was when she asked, how can they afford it, right?
Total lack of information about the economy of places like San Antonio, San Diego, throughout the Southwest.
No, I absolutely. I mean, look, my grandmother was, she used to say a maid, a babysitter, and a cook. And there are a lot of folks in our community who were still working very hard in very humble jobs. But, there is also folks all over the economic spectrum. And I think mass media has confined us and put us in a corner that they're almost determined not to let you out of.
Yes.
No matter what you do.
And I think they also see us overwhelmingly as immigrants, not as people whose history goes way back before the nation was founded.
Absolutely. No, I think that's right. I remember, I'm going to butcher the numbers, so I won't give them because I can't remember. It's been several years. But I remember seeing a poll or a survey of Americans, and it was a question about basically what percentage of Latinos they thought were immigrants. And the number was incredibly high. In other words, most Americans thought that most Latinos or Hispanics were almost all immigrants or overwhelmingly immigrants, when actually the reverse is true.
The reverse is
clear
true.
Majority.
Especially in San Antonio.
This is like a multi-generational Latino town.
Okay, states give tax breaks to productions, to TV and film productions, even when they don't hire Latinos either in front of the camera or behind it. If you could redesign those incentives, what would they look like and how could they impact Hollywood?
Well, since I wrote those op-eds, y'all know the attacks on DEI and wokeness and all of these things has just grown more intense. And, Texas passed a film incentive program recently, for example. But what I said back then, and I think is still true, you take California or New Mexico, which have had these incentives for a longer period. California is about 40% Latino, and New Mexico is even more than that, like maybe 45 or more. And so when you have a tax base of people that's 40% or 45% Latino, and yet they're only getting about 6 or 7% of the work, I think at some point you have to admit there's a lot of people that are subsidizing their own exclusion from an industry. And, and I used to go to California and I would tell these folks, these executives, the oil and gas industry in Texas, which is, one of, if you take progressives or liberals, are very critical of that industry, right? For different reasons. That industry is more diverse than Hollywood. I mean, literally, if you go out, there are more Latinos working in the oil and gas industry at different levels than you have working in Hollywood. I don't see Hollywood. I think Hollywood is one of the most regressive industries in this country. It's been a very closed industry. And in many ways, it's still like that. Now, they're dealing with very, in some ways, for many jobs, existential issues with AI that's coming. And
They're
so the
gonna
industry
need our help and sympathy.
it's
Our help.
That industry is going to change so much probably because of artificial intelligence. A lot of industries will. But that's why I was supportive of the unions who were on strike a few years ago. And one of the things as we discussed the issues with them, I was saying, y'all really, as you negotiate, should look ahead to the dangers of artificial intelligence and the displacement of workers.
Your work to get Latino films recognized and put into the Library of Congress's National Film Registry includes Selena and the Ballad of Gregorio Cortés, and I'm sure you can mention others. But how are we doing even in that registry?
We're doing better. We're improving. So now, we've just talked about how there aren't that many Latinos in Hollywood,
right.
But of the folks who have been there and who have done great work, I wanted to make sure that work is recognized and is celebrated as fundamentally part of American culture. So the Library of Congress has two registries, basically the film registry and the music registry. And, if you're a director or a producer and your film is inducted into the National Film Registry, that's an incredible honor. I mean, there's only 25 films inducted every year.
Yeah.
And they're also preserved for
That's right.
forever and ever.
These are supposed to be the representations of American culture that are being preserved for generations of Americans in the world going forward. So if you get inducted, that's the kind of thing that literally ends up in somebody's obituary. If you're a director whose film was inducted into the National Film Registry. So it's incredibly prestigious. And our, Latino and Latina directors and others, filmmakers, their films were only making up about 3 or 4% of the inductees. So about 4 years ago, we started an effort to ask the public, hey, what are your suggestions, right? So it's a very public effort. And then we make recommendations to the Library of Congress. Same thing with music. So on film, we did get Selena in there, the Ballad of Gregorio Cortés, American Me, and then in music have been able to get some songs in there, and we're continuing to nominate new ones every year.
What does the Library of Congress look at when they're deciding on these films? I'm sure cultural impact must have something to do with this.
Cultural significance.
Okay.
So it's not just, what are the most popular songs, because the songs in the films have to be at least 10 years old. So people ask why I haven't nominated Bad Bunny, because his oldest song is not 10 years old. He's getting there, but
he's almost there.
Close.
He's almost there.
It's pretty close. And I promise we'll nominate him when the 10 years is up. But it's got to be 10 years old.
Yeah. The best halftime show.
Oh yeah, it was incredible, and I think the most watched from what I read.
Yes, and then when you saw Ricky Martin show up. Doing that song, I was crawling out of my skin. I just couldn't believe it. It was so magnificent.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a great celebration.
Okay, we'll have to move on. We're sort of getting to pop culture where we wanted to go to.
But I love that we brought up Bad Bunny.
I know. I'm all about that. Okay, so we need to know, since you deal now in your real job as a politician with movies and films, and music, tell us what your favorite movie overall is.
Oh, ever?
And what's your favorite Latino themed movie? It might be the same one.
Yep.
Yeah. No. I mean, probably my favorite movie ever is probably The Breakfast Club, which was a John Hughes movie.
Of course.
from
Oh, that
1985.
defines a generation.
Yeah, he had that string of hits in the 80s.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Y'all Pretty in Everything, right?
Yeah. Pretty in Pink.
Pretty in Pink.
and-
Yeah, I think Planes, Trains, Automobiles, a bunch of hits. But The Breakfast Club.
Yep.
And then probably my favorite Latino-centered movie, I mean, it's probably either La Bamba or Stand and Deliver. One of those two, which were both great movies.
Both great.
Great
Yeah.
movies. And isn't La Bamba going to be redone?
Remade. Yes,
gonna-
Kiko
I saw that.
told us that.
I saw that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Kiko
I don't know
Martinez
who's doing
was
it
a-
or who's in it or anything.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we don't know,
Yeah.
but it's very exciting, although it's hard for me to think of anyone else as
I
as-
know.
as,
Like
uh,
anybody besides like Richie, playing Richie Valens.
yes, but
Lou
the
Diamond
brother,
Phillips.
Yeah,
Lou-
Isai
but the
Morales.
Isai Morales as
Morales,
yeah.
Bob.
Yeah.
I mean, Richie. I mean, how can you? Oh, that's iconic.
I know. Whoever's doing it, they better do a good
They
job.
better
because-
bring it. They better bring new dimensions to Bob. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly,
That bar is real high.
So, Congressman, if you could green light one project, be it a movie, a series, a documentary even, that would show the United States the depth and brilliance of Latino stories, what would it be? And again, who's starring in it? I mean, Elaine and I are dying to know.
Yeah. Well, we'll put y'all in it.
Oh, Michael has already been in 2 movies,
Yeah.
so he's got. Do you
You
have?
have
I have
acting credits
experience.
then. Yes.
Do you have a union card?
They did send me the application to join.
Oh my God! You better do it.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I don't know if y'all remember, there was a book that was written, I think, in the 1980s called Reign of Gold.
Of course.
From back then. And I always thought that
It's
a
cinematic.
long story like that, it was kind of a long book, but a story like that really talks about the generational experience of Latinos in the United States and the immigration story and everything would be so beautiful. Obviously, you've got to make it right with the right cast and all
The
that.
right money.
But if you could do it well, I think that not only would be a great, compelling movie, but also in terms of usefulness for people in our country having a sense of who we are as Mexican Americans and then as Latinos. I think something like that.
Yeah, it would tap into a lot of history
That's right.
that has been untold, even for young Latinos who don't know that, we've been here for centuries.
No, I mean, I asked a Mexican American studies teacher a few years ago who also teaches American history. I asked him how many major Latino or Latina figures they study in their course in the book, and he said only a few. He said he would supplement it with his own stuff. But I asked, but if it wasn't you, if it was just the book, and he said only a few. You're talking about a state that's 40% Latino, right? Texas is 40% Latino, and yet the Latino experience has been left out of the telling of the American experience.
And we have surpassed in terms of children in the state who are in public schools. They make more than half.
Yeah.
And we're getting to more than 50% in the overall Latino population as well.
Elaine and I always talk about if a movie could be made, it would be Emma
Tenayuca.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And
No,
there's
that would be
been
another
some
great
effort,
great
and
one.
there is a biography being written by Carmen Tafoya and Cheryl Tenayuca. They've been working on it for a real long time. I keep nudging them. But that was a book early when they were writing it. America Ferrera
Yeah.
was very interested in, but she's probably aged out. We'd have
They've taken a while on the book. I guess.
it's taken so long she's aged out of the character.
But no, I mean, just the idea of Latino history, when your history and people from your community are not taught in public schools, in our textbooks, it's really a statement that it's an implicit statement that nobody from your community, whether it's in business, in politics, in entrepreneurship, science, whatever it is, that nobody has done anything, made any contribution that's worth learning about.
Right.
I mean, that's the implicit statement when you're left out of textbooks.
That's right.
There's nobody, no
You
author,
didn't
no
count.
scientist.
You didn't do anything.
Yeah, you didn't do anything worth learning about, right? I mean, that's really what you're saying.
Yeah. Congressman, we've run out of
I
time.
know, this is so much fun.
Thanks
talking
for
about
coming
this.
on the Buena Vista Project.
You can find this and our other podcast on buenavistaproject.com, as well as on our channels on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music pages. And we'll see you next time. Until then,
Hasta la Buena Vista.
baby.
Thanks for coming on.